The nitrogen cycle. This, that is the nitrogen cycle, refers to the cyclic transfer of nitrogen and its compound between living organisms and their physical environment. That is the cyclic transfer of nitrogen and its compound between living organisms and their physical environment. Now, why would organisms require nitrogen? This is because nitrogen is essential in the synthesis of amino acids and thus provides the building blocks of proteins. Nitrogen is also important for the synthesis of ATP molecules that carries energy, and DNA is a type of nucleic acid that makes up the chromosomes. Nitrogen also plays a role, in fact forms part and parcel of chlorophyll molecule, that is a photochemical molecule or a pigment that absorbs light during photosynthesis. Plants cannot utilize the free atmospheric nitrogen, but absorb it in the form of nitrates from the soil or water. Animals can only obtain nitrogen by feeding on plants' proteins or by feeding on other animals. The nitrogen cycle consists of four main processes. There are four main processes that make up the nitrogen cycle. The first one is known as nitrogen fixation. Nitrogen fixation. Then there is ammonification. Which is a type of decomposition in which organic matter that contain proteins are broken down, and one of the products is ammonia. So the production of ammonia through decomposition is what is known as ammonification. And then the third process is nitrification. And lastly, denitrification. These are the main processes. So in between them, there are other processes that are involved in the cyclic transfer of nitrogen from one part of the habitat or ecosystem to the other. Now, in this diagram here, we see the flowchart showing the nitrogen cycle. And we're going to look at each of the main processes that are involved in the nitrogen cycle using this diagram. The first one, as mentioned, is nitrogen fixation. Nitrogen fixation. This is a process by which the free atmospheric nitrogen is converted into a form that can be utilized by plants. This process comes about in two ways. One, there is a biological fixation. The biological nitrogen fixation. This involves living nitrogen fixing bacteria such as the rhizobium, that occur or live in the roots of legumes, and the free-living Azotobacter bacteria. These organisms convert the free nitrogen gas in the soil air into ammonia which is then converted into nitrates that can be used by plants. The other type of nitrogen fixation is the non-biological fixation, and this is achieved by lightning during thunderstorm. The energy from lightning causes the free atmospheric nitrogen to combine with oxygen to form nitrogen oxides. The oxides dissolve in rainwater to form nitric and nitrous acids. In the soil, the acids combine with compounds such as carbonates to form the nitrates. So, through lightning, nitrates are formed, and these nitrates can then be absorbed by plants, which use them for a number of functions or processes such as the synthesis of amino acids and proteins. So through nitrogen fixation, the free atmospheric nitrogen, whether in the atmosphere or in the soil, is converted into a form that can be taken up by plants. And this happens in two ways. One, biological process in which the symbiotic rhizobium that lives in the nodules of legumes plants converts nitrogen into ammonia, the nitrates that can be used by plants. And then Azotobacter, which is a free-living bacteria, is also involved in nitrogen fixation. Then there's a non-biological fixation process that is brought about by lightning during thunderstorms. The second main process in the nitrogen cycle is ammonification. Ammonification is a process by which protein compounds in dead plants and animals, or the waste products of plants and animals, are broken down into ammonia by saprophytic fungi and bacteria. So we have dead plant material and animal material, or the waste products from these organisms, being broken down through decomposition to release ammonia. And the release of ammonia through decomposition is what is known as ammonification. The ammonia then combines with soil compounds to form ammonium compounds. So we have the formation of ammonium compounds in the soil. Then the ammonium compounds will undergo another process that will help in the formation of nitrates. This other process is known as the nitrification, the third important process in the nitrogen cycle. That is nitrification. Nitrification is a process by which the ammonium compounds are converted into nitrates by nitrifying bacteria. This conversion occurs in two steps. The first step involves the conversion of ammonium compounds into nitrates, and this is carried out by bacteria known as Nitrosomonas and Nitrococcus. So this process, the first step, forms nitrates. Nitrates are poisonous to plants, and therefore they are immediately oxidized by Nitrobacter bacteria to form the nitrates. The nitrates are absorbed by plants and assimilated into proteins. So you have the absorption process, and assimilation into proteins that make up the part of the plant tissues. The proteins are used to make the plant tissues, and the plants are then eaten by animals, which digest the plant proteins and absorb the amino acids into their bodies. The amino acids, so that is the process. So through feeding, the proteins in plants are consumed by the animals. The animals digest the plant proteins and absorb the amino acids into their bodies. These animals then use the amino acids to make their own proteins. Then both plants and the animals, when they die, their protein in their bodies are decomposed through ammonification. The ammonia forms ammonium compounds, and then through nitrification, the ammonium compounds are converted first into nitrates, then nitrates, and the cycle goes on. Now, the fourth process, main process in the nitrogen cycle, is denitrification. This is a process by which soil microorganisms reduce the nitrates to nitrates and then to ammonia gas. The ammonia is finally converted into free nitrogen, which is then released into the atmosphere. So denitrification involves several steps: conversion of nitrates into nitrates, then nitrates into ammonia, and ammonia into the free nitrogen, which is released into the atmosphere. So these steps here is a simplification of the process of denitrification. Denitrification is in fact the reverse of the nitrification process. Nitrates are reduced into nitrates, nitrates into ammonia, and then ammonia into the free nitrogen that is released into the atmosphere. Denitrification is carried out by this bacteria known as Pseudomonas denitrificans.